So it's time to leave the waking world behind and enter the nightmare realm of Fatal Frame 3 yet again.
Mio.
So in the 8th hour, we find ourselves back in control of Kei, still in the Kurosawa house, in front of a locked cell with Mio rambling on to herself. And much in the same way that this cell was locked previously in Fatal Frame 2, we have to find the light and shadow key yet again.
Was the promise, Mayu? We were always going to be together. So, I want
Mio.
to go too.
It's okay.
So we can
I'll be back
together
soon.
again.
I'm not really sure what Mio is saying or where we should go, but this door wasn't here before in the cell, so I guess it'll be the first place for us to check.
I want to go too. So we can.
And we find ourselves in another familiar room from the Kurosawa house, the Great Hall where the just a large amount of carnage had happened previously. And one piece of that carnage, you may recall, was off in this little side closet here.
Stay back. Stay back.
That's right, the land surveyor, Masumi, from Fatal Frame 2, is still locked away in here. Obviously, just a memory for Mio. That's what a lot of this place is going to be, but there are going to be a few new things popping up here and there, as this is a dream version of the mansion.
Let's stay together forever. It's a promise.
Such as this version of the sacrificial twins. Definitely we're too old to be Mayu and Mio, or Sai and Yai. But it could very well be just a memory, or some mental interpretation that Mio has from her time in that horrible village. But in much the same way that Himuro Mansion did not follow a coherent fashion in the manner of sleep, so too do we find ourselves in an unconnected area. And yet still a very familiar and important one from All Gods Village. You may recall this was the Osaka house. Before we follow that crimson butterfly, though, I do want to take a quick peek into this little side door here. As this does connect back into the main manner of sleep. And you can tell it's kind of the manner of sleep rather than Mio's dream, as we do see one of the shrine mains there. I think that was Amane. But obviously we are blocked from heading upstairs by this huge amount of stair rubble here, but there is a hidden ghost waiting amongst the rubble. And by the description for this particular hidden ghost, it seems to have been a woman crushed who was trying to reach for a book. Also, if you were curious about this door back here, well, it's not really useful for right now. And that means we're pretty much going to have to stick inside the All Gods Village portion of the mansion for the rest of the update. Also, for our curiosity, we do get attacked by one of the engravers, or I think the game calls them needle women. But as per usual, it's a good idea not to fight, and if you can, just run away. But outside of these two mysterious twins, this is a pretty good recreation of the Osaka house from Fatal Frame 2. I mean, obviously there are a few differences, such as boarded up doors. And, well, we could go through that door, but it would lead us out of the dream. But continuing to harken back to Fatal Frame 2, we do find a new piece of writing telling us a little bit about Masumi and Miyako, who you may remember were the two lovers that stumbled into All God's village and ended up getting trapped there and dying. Not exactly sure how you're supposed to know that offhand, and really that's one of the kind of problems with Fatal Frame 3, is that if you haven't played Fatal Frame 1 and 2, you will kind of lose some of the story behind the game. But if we did want to follow behind those twin ghosts, we are blocked by this locked door. The good news is that the key isn't too far away. We do have at least one other room we can check in the Osaka house. And that is in here in the kimono room. Now in here we do find another piece of that red notebook, going on a little bit more about Miyako's gradual mental breakdown. More importantly though, there is something important waiting for us in the back of the room. And it's not just a nod to the woman in a box, even though that is a nice little nod. But no, what is actually important back here is this ginger key. That'll help us unlock that door on the second floor, even though Kay asks if it could be to Mio's cell, which is a bit odd. If it was a bit hard to see, that vanishing ghost was that blue tattooed topless lady. And that is definitely not a good sign. That means that she is very much close by. And in fact, she is waiting out in the main room here. But we don't have to worry too much about her. We just need to rush upstairs to that locked door. Being very, very careful, as she is still very much a one-hit kill. Good news is, yet again, just by heading into another room, she's no longer a danger.
Should we continue the ritual?
We find the two mysterious twin ghosts yet again. This time we find them in the male twins room from Fatal Frame 2. Yeah, this was the ritualistic item-laden room of Itsuki and Mitsuki. But those twin ghosts were nice enough to leave two items waiting for us. The first one being the shadow key. And if you can make an easy enough assumption, that means the other item is the light key. So now we can go open Mio's cell door.
He's not coming back.
along with another visit from one of the shrine maidens. Sadly, we are not able to follow behind her, as if we take a look at the nearby wall, we see a very familiar puzzle from Fatal Frame 2 that we currently do not have the key for. But that does mean that we will probably be revisiting this area at some point in the future. Though we do want to go ahead and pick up a hidden item here in the dresser, which is more sacred water. Still cannot overstate at this point that Kei's inventory, along with Miku and Rei's, is pretty barren. Also, the tattooed lady is still downstairs, but it's not too difficult to evade her. Just taking the back stairs here, we'll easily make our way past her. Though, what was that? Do you see that in the wall? It looks kind of like a face. Just a little Easter egg that's easily overlooked. But say hello to an old friend from Fatal Frame 2, the tortured folklorist Monokata, as the kusabi, or rope man as the game calls him. Or I think also the pictures refer to him as the wedge. In much the same way as the rope shrine maiden in Himuro Mansion, we have to fight yet again the final boss, or second to last boss, of Fatal Frame 2. Though in this circumstance, I don't think you can actually damage him, and instead just have to keep evading him, as the door is mysteriously locked. The good news is that he isn't too difficult to evade. He will do his 3-hit combo from Fatal Frame 2, along with a swooping attack. But once you hear that little bell and see some crimson butterflies, that means the door is now unlocked and we can leave this man behind. The bad news is that, well, in keeping with the same themes as Fatal Frame 2, Mio is nowhere to be seen, much like her sister Mayu. There is the small chance that she could be waiting around the corner behind the bookshelves, but you can probably guess pretty well that she isn't. Now inside the cell we find some somewhat familiar writing, along with a pinwheel key that we can use in one of those familiar Fatal Frame 2 puzzles. More importantly though, we do find a very useful power lens in here, and that is the Zero Lens. You may recall the Zero Lens from Fatal Frame 2 is pretty much a direct upgrade from the Blast Lens in that it does, I'm wanting to say, almost triple damage for a shot, and in regards to Kei, that means he can do damage equal to Rei or Miku's normal powered shot. So that initially seems good, but it does have some drawbacks for right now. The most obvious drawback being that Kei only has one single spirit orb, and that power costs 3 to use. Now this is easily enough rectified, as we have been accruing quite a few points. So that means we can do a little bit of powering up for Kei to make his journey a tad bit easier. And we can also up his max value, range, and sensitivity. The only other problem with Kei using the Zero Lens is that since he does so very little damage, it takes him quite a bit of time to even store up 3 spirit orbs. Also, I was just double checking to make sure that I definitely don't have enough to upgrade the Zero Lens for right now, but I'm sure we'll be doing that later. But, as you can guess, and as I said before, Mio is nowhere to be seen in here. No idea how she managed to get out, but if we check some of the bookshelves, we do find some interesting reading material. I guess more or less to catch people up in case they missed out on the story of Fatal Frame 2, as we learn about the Twin Shrine Maidens who were used in the Crimson Sacrifice ritual. And it does talk a little bit about the sacrifice itself, but it uses the same asterisk symbols from the second game to cover up the true wording and meaning of what happened in the rituals. In addition to that, there is another book hidden back here. Goes into a little bit more detail about the Crimson Sacrifice itself. Goes into how it's used to seal the gates of hell by sacrificing one of the twins to make the twins whole again. And it does talk a little bit about the repentance and how the skies will go eternally dark if the sacrifice fails. Still, yet again, it would probably mean more to you if you played Fatal Frame 2. As there is one other little nod to the game waiting in the cell. Yeah, a little triggerable event that was also present in Fatal Frame 2. But that just leaves nothing else to do in here, so on to still looking for Mio. Good news is that there's always a helpful crimson butterfly around to help us figure out which way to go. Now, whether or not that's actually the disembodied soul of Mayu that's somehow pushed into the Manor of Sleep, or just another manifestation of Mio's dream, is a bit difficult to say, but we do find our first usable pinwheel puzzle down here. And for those that didn't play Fatal Frame 2, it's a simple enough trial and error puzzle where we have to spin the dials to match up the colors in the center with the outside pinwheel colors. There's no punishment for screwing up. You can just keep trying it till you get it right.
We're always going to be together. We promised. I won't leave you. I'll go too. Together. Again.
Now, I think it might be a bit hard to make out the whispering in the background, but it seems to be the chanting about being together forever and how they would be together again.
I won't.
Seemed to be the mantra of choice going throughout Fatal Frame 2.
Together. Again.
You may recall where this spiral staircase led.
Promise.
Thankfully, it's not to the gates of hell, and instead,
Mayu, we'll always be together.
it's back to a somewhat more dreadful place, and that was the point of death for Manakata, as he was strung up and made into the kusabi. You'll find a hidden ghost just for that circumstance. But we don't have time to worry about that. It seems like Mio is right nearby.
Mio?
Though it seems we are barred from following her, which is a bit of a sad circumstance. Guess we're just going to press back the way we came. But not before dealing with the kusabi in a very, very, very difficult fight for Kei. Now, the kusabi has one new attack that he didn't show off in the Great Hall before, which is the ability to spit out all of these semi-homing ghostly spirits. But fighting him here is, like I said, very difficult. He has a lot of health, he does a lot of damage, and that spirit attack, well, let's just say it's pretty much nigh on impossible to avoid. Not to mention his opportunity for a fatal frame is pretty damn difficult to get down. You would assume that it was probably the swooping attack, but it's not. It's kind of this weird charge up triple hit combo that he has. And I haven't mentioned it before, but to complete the spirit list, you do have to get a fatal frame on every enemy in the game. And as far as I remember, Kay is the only one that ever actually fights the kusabi, though I might be wrong on that one. But if you are persistent enough and careful enough, and if you've carried enough healing items, that fight is still honestly very, very difficult. But with only one other way out of the room, I guess it's time to backtrack and see if we missed something possibly in Mio's cell. Though we do get another ghostly visit from the kusabi. And this time around, it's highly recommended just to run away from him, as this particular hallway, not a good place to fight him at all, and I'm not even certain that you can even damage him at this point. I think they scripted him to be invincible yet again. And as it still seems like our viewfinder is red, I guess he is still following us, so we just need to keep running and running and running. And just like that, another terrifying night in the dream world is over. Didn't really learn too much other than the fact that, well, the manner of sleep is incredibly sprawling. And I can only hope that this is not another ghostly spirit that's going to yell in our ear. Honestly, once is one too many for me.
Is this the home of Mr. Aso?
Yes, it is.
Hi, my name is Kei Amakura. Is you in at the moment?
You're...
But no, it's actually just a pleasant call from Kay, even though we now have to reveal the information that Yu is dead. As to why he was calling, we're not exactly sure, but it does seem to have something to do with the investigation into the manner of sleep, which Ray really wants him to keep investigating for obvious reasons.
Would it be alright if I paid my respects sometime soon?
Yes.
I'd like to say goodbye to him.
it seems more and more like that tenuous line between the nightmare world and the waking world is growing ever more and more thinner for Rei. But as we've headed into a new night and we have a few musty films to develop, we might as well head into the dark room and get that out of the way. Our first film is of the surveyor Masumi, who, as of right now, if you first played Fatal Frame 3, you would have no idea about, but you will learn more about. And I did forget to get a musty picture of Mio in her cell, though as we develop the film, we'll see that she was definitely not alone in there. And finally, we get a developed picture of those two twins. Now, you may notice that one of the twins' hair is white and the other is black, and much like in the case of Itsuki, who we talked to in the cell, the white hair color was actually denoting of the one remaining twin that survived after the ritual. I guess the ritual and the empowerment from it drove the twins' hair white. But since we do have some film developed and some information waiting for us, I think we might as well go hit up Miku to figure out just what she has found out about the other films we have given her. We do have quite a treasure trove waiting for us. Though before I do that, I want to get something out of the way in Yu's room. We haven't gone in here in quite a bit of time, and though I'm not sure how you're supposed to figure this out on your own, after having developed that picture of Masumi, we do find a random newspaper clipping on Yu's desk. Goes a little bit more into the mysterious disappearance of Miyako and Masumi, and the idea that they were spirited away in the Minakami Mountains, where All Gods Village supposedly existed before it was sunk underneath all of the water from that dam. But that will be helpful to us to get more information later from Miku regarding those two.
Ray? What's the matter? Ray? Here.
So, like I said, she does have a plethora of information to give us this time around. The first bit being about the woman who crawls on all fours. The most she can give us right now is that it seems to have spawned some type of urban legend, and that with most urban legends, they can be found to have some realistic basis. In this case, there may or may not have been a horrible disaster that left a woman entrapped in some area, and that definitely could have been what we had dealt with back in the Manor of Sleep, but I think there is a little bit more to that story than we currently have. In addition to that, we do find a little bit more about the shrine carpenters, or the men in white, and the faceless man. In this case, we do find that shrine carpenters were carpenters that dealt with temples and shrines, and normally only dealt with temples and shrines and wouldn't sully their hands with just normal architecture. And in the case of most of the shrine carpenters, they did have a few secrets and would normally only work on one particular type of shrine, or one ritualistic building, or one type I should say, and that the clothes they wear were normally to denote some piety, but really were just to assert some kind of pride in their work. And this is where some very important information comes into play, and that is in regards to that tattoo picture that we took before. Miku was able to uncover a few different stories regarding tattooed maidens, the first one being about how a maiden, after her lover died, had tattooed on her body a holly leaf, and that after every subsequent lover's death, she managed to tattoo a snake, which ended up killing her. Likewise, we find that there is another variant of the story about a tattooed master who has a very similar tale, but instead of a lover dying, she ends up tattooing all of the horrible things that happen to the nearby villagers in some effort to take away their horrible torment and instead place it on herself. That invariably left her in something of a painful coma as she tattooed more and more on herself, which led to her death. And finally, there is one last variant of the story which talks about a similar tattoo master, but instead of the tattooed person dying, it was other people. Now, all this does seem very familiar to what we've been experiencing about a tattoo sharing some sort of emotion and one person being left to hulk away all that burden. And we do get one last piece of information about Miss Takagawa. As I mentioned before, the figures around her, those shadowy images we've been seeing, are representations of her guilt about having survived the plane crash, as all those things we've been seeing, well, they appear as her family members and lovers that died in the plane crash.
You can ask me whatever you want, okay? It seems like you're having a lot of nightmares lately. Are you alright?
And we'll go ahead and give her
Is there something?
a few pictures to look into, since we got a few developed, such as these twins.
Understood. I'll let you know if I find anything. Oh, I'm sorry. I blanked out for a second.
Yeah, we are just learning more and more about this ritual, this tattooing, this just horrible thing that this poor priestess had to go through. And it's still very much the tip of the iceberg, but be careful rushing into Ray's bedroom, as there is a vanishing ghost waiting in here, underneath the bed. I get a feeling, though, that that's not Miss Takagawa. But I think that's a good time to stop as any, as we have learned quite a bit. But hopefully you'll join me next time as we head back into the Manor of Sleep.